Do we have the thumbs up? All right, great. All right, so welcome everyone to tonight's Candidate and Issues Forum. We are very happy to have you all here, and we're very happy to have the viewers of JCTV with us as well. My name is Stephanie Bell, and I serve as the government chair for HYPE, which is the Young Professionals Organization for the Jefferson City Area Chamber of Commerce. HYPE began about 2 years ago, and we currently have over 400 members between the ages of 20 and 40 here in Jefferson City. And we meet monthly to learn about community leaders, important issues, and important organizations. Part of our focus is to keep young people engaged in the community, participating in the community, and wanting to make Jefferson City a place where they can live and raise their family. Part of the Chamber's mission is to be the leading public policy advocate for business people. And as young professionals and business people, we care about the direction of our city, our county, and our state. Our goal here tonight is to simply provide a means by which citizens can learn more about candidates and issues so that they can make their own decisions before voting in the November election. Sample ballots are available outside, as well as literature from each of the candidates and issue spokespeople. Thank you for attending, and now I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Frank Newell.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I think we'll just get right into it tonight. We're going to start with those candidates, particularly the local candidates who are unopposed. We've offered them each an opportunity to spend 2 minutes kind of telling their story in a 2-minute capsule. We'll begin that with Chris Estes, who is running unopposed for the Cole County Assessor. Chris? If you'll take the seat over there.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll keep this real brief. I was appointed to this position in 2007 by Governor Blunt. I was elected in 2008, and I'm running unopposed this time. I appreciate being able to serve the citizens of Cole County and Jefferson City. Anytime I say Cole County, that includes every city that's inside Cole County. I believe in a separate Cole County and a separate Jefferson City. We're all in the same game here, and we need to work together. Probably the biggest thing that we've been worried about the past couple of years is the economy, obviously. We're trying to keep the values as accurate as we can. Every odd year is a reassessment year, and values get calculated. In the past, 2009, about 3,500 went up, 3,500 went down. 2011, 1,600 went up, 1,600 went down. That was told us about 35,000. We've not seen much of those changes in the last 4 years.
Okay. Yes, sir. They did charging the battery, so
Thank you.
switch them so it should.
And next we'll ask Eric Peters, who is running unopposed for Cole County Treasurer. Make sure the green light is on at the microphone, too.
Fortunately, this year I thought I was going to dodge the bullet. My wife and I had our first child, so now I actually know what loud, messy, and exhausting really is. I know that the candidates later will be asked what their key issues are with their constituency, and I would say that as county treasurer, transparency, an overused phrase these days, is probably the key issue for our office. Before I got in, monthly reconciliations would take 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 months long. And if you're the county auditor or you're the county commission or if you're other offices that pay attention to how much money's in your bank account, it's important for those reports to be done on time. And Penny Quigg, who I appointed my deputy, the two of us, rather than waiting 2 or 3 or 4 months, we usually get it within the first or second day of the year, and I think that that's a good way to run an office, and I'd assume most people would agree. Anyway, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the program, and appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Here I not following my own instructions. The next part of our format is we have taken the candidates who have sent representatives, and we're going to allow the representatives 2 minutes each to speak on their candidate in the same manner that we did with the unopposed candidates. And here to speak on behalf of Republican candidate Dave Spence is Aaron Baker.
Hello. As he said, my name is Aaron Baker, and I'm a representative of Dave Spence for governor. 27 years ago, Dave Spence went to 12 different banks who turned him down for a small business loan. The 13th bank finally said yes, and he started the rebirth of a company that had 15 employees at that time. He's grown that company, Alpha Packaging, to 865 employees. He has other companies, Legacy, that a lot of us don't hear about as well, that does pharmaceutical packaging. And he grew that company from 15 to 865 employees, again, in 27 years. Dave Spence is a job creator. He understands that Missouri taxpayers that the government should work for taxpayers. And he believes in pro-jobs reforms, such as right to work and other things such as workers' comp that would bring our state more competitive with our neighbors. You know, when the Democrats in Wisconsin were trying to recall Scott Walker, they said that Wisconsin was 49th in job creation since the recession. And if you watch the ad closely, it goes through all the states and their rankings. And the 50th state in job creation, the slowest state to recover since the recession, was Missouri. We believe that that's because the Nixon administration is led by trial lawyers and labor unions who are a toxic environment for our jobs in this state. And we believe that we can do better. Dave Spence, again, for 27 years, has been out like you and I working and growing a company. Jay Nixon is a career politician and has been living off of you and I, the taxpayers, for 26 years. Dave Spence would say that this year is a very good time to put a businessman as the CEO of our state, which hasn't been done since 1937, and to retire career politicians. And so with that, I want to thank you for your time.
Representing Republican candidate Shane Scholler for the Secretary of State's office is Jeremy Cady.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Cady. I'm here on behalf of Shane Scholler, who's running for Secretary of State. Shane Scholler is running for Secretary of State because he wants to restore integrity to the Secretary of State's office. He wants to protect your vote by implementing common sense election reform like voter ID. He believes someone that gets a ballot should be the person that they say they are. Shane Scholler also wants to put a stop to unfair, biased ballot summaries. He wants to put forth a fair ballot commission of Missourians just like you that actually holds the Secretary of State accountable to the people for the summaries that they write, so that way ballots that appear, or language that appears on our ballots, is fair and accurate. And Shane Scholler also wants to put a stop to overburdensome regulatory rules that are put forth by our state agencies that actually put a chokehold on our job-creating businesses. Shane Scholler wants to restore integrity, and I ask for your support for him November 6th. Thank you.
Now this evening we'll move on to office by office. I'll give each candidate 1 minute to introduce themselves. Then I'll go back and ask the candidate in those particular offices on a one-by-one basis a particular question which was forwarded to them in advance. By the end of this evening, you'll all be able to lip sync that question because I'll ask the same question of everybody and all of the candidates. We'll begin tonight with we have a candidate here for the office of Lieutenant Governor, and that would be Cynthia Davis. Cynthia, we'd offer you 1 minute to introduce yourself, and then I'll have a question for you.
Thank you. I'm Cynthia Davis, and I moved here from Massachusetts back in the early 80s. And I don't recommend everybody go live in Massachusetts, but I'll tell you this much. When you get to Missouri, it is so wonderful to be in a freedom-loving state. My husband and I opened a Christian bookstore in O'Fallon, and we were open a short time when we found out that government made a bad decision that hurt all the businesses. So after engaging in the process, I finally realized that we can't fix government unless we're going to get involved and do something to correct the problem. And so I ran for state government. First, I ran for local government and spent over 8 years in O'Fallon city government. And then I ran for state government and spent 8 years in Missouri state government until I got term limited. And then I found out really, all governments have a similar problem, and that is they tend to be greedy and seek to extract the maximum and grow unless somebody slows them down. That's why I'm here.
Cynthia, then my question for you is, what are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how in your elected office will you address each of these issues? You have 4 minutes, please.
Sure. Well, first of all, what we really need to get the country back on track and the state is to be constitutional. So, while I was in the Missouri State Legislature, I won this award for being the most constitutional legislator in the state of Missouri. And what's cool about the Constitution is it's our common denominator. Everybody can agree that it's time to be constitutional. So what the state really needs is for a lieutenant governor to fulfill the highest obligation, and that is to be the president of the Senate. And the position comes with a platform that's terribly underutilized right now. And what we can do is serve as the conscience for the legislature, because there's several times this last session even when the Republican held House and Senate did things that landed on the governor's desk, and he had to veto it because it was unconstitutional. So when we start speaking the truth, we will make a difference. The other thing is, I'm the only one who is endorsed by Missouri Right to Life in this race. And for anybody who understands the life issue, that is key to most other issues because it has to do with our respect for how we treat people. And if somebody's doing wrong, we need to call them out. The third thing I will do is hold them all accountable. And that's another point that we're not getting right now. When people, let's say it this way, when you have a Republican or a Democrat in that seat, their first goal is to make the Republicans look good or the Democrats look good. And we're not getting real, honest debate. And we're having so much effort go toward cover up and make our party look good so we can all get reelected that there's a great void of truth going out to the citizens. So if both parties have let us down, what is the best way to correct it? Is to have somebody who's willing to be brave enough to stand up and do what's right. I intend to have sessions in my office with the legislators where they can learn what we're doing before it's too late. And having served as a floor whip in the House, I can't tell you how frustrating it was to have bills come to the floor and people didn't know what's in them. The leadership knows, but the rank and file don't. And if you're tired of getting those panic emails saying they're about to do something awful again, we can have a better way of correcting government if we will start with having good information and focusing on what's right and what's wrong. So the best way to explain it is to use the alcoholic model. The first step is to admit you've got a problem, and the second step is to call on a higher power to solve it. But the third step is we need an intervention, and I am the intervention. You will be so happy with what you see when you have somebody there who's going to be honest enough to just be upfront with what's going on. So think of it this way. I will be the designated driver in the room full of drunks. Thank you.
I should mention at this point that we're not taking questions from the audience, but if you have questions, you're invited to approach the candidates at the intermission, and if they should choose to stay around after our forum this evening, you're also welcome to approach them there, and they'll have, as was mentioned earlier, some literature out in the lobby for that time. We have one candidate for the office of Attorney General here, and that is Ed Martin, the Republican candidate. First, 1 minute to introduce yourself.
Thank you, sir. My name is Ed Martin. I'm running for Attorney General, and it's nice to be back in Jefferson City to visit my daughter Madeline. When we lived here on Madeline's Park Circle. Our son Edward was born during that time, and Madeline still refers to that as her house, even though it's long been sold. But I am an attorney in private law practice. I have my own law practice. I have worked for a large law firm. I worked for Governor Matt Blunt and his administration as his chief of staff. I also served as the chairman of the Board of Elections in St. Louis. In addition, I clerked in Kansas City in the Federal Court of Appeals. And I'm someone who believes very much in the great profession of attorneys and the importance of it in our country and in our state, and I'm honored to be the Republican nominee for Attorney General.
And then the question?
Yes, sir.
What are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how, in your elected office, will you address each of these issues?
Yep. So let me list them and then talk about them. The first one is what I would say describe as the corruption of the rule of law. The second one is protection from government overreach. And the last one is an initiative that I rolled out that we talked about that has to do with veterans and active duty military. And these are all issues that that in listening for the last period of months, examining what's gone on in this office as well as in other attorneys general across the country, these issues seem to be primary. First, corruption. The fact is that as government has grown bigger, it has grown more intrusive. It has grown more able to decide, as Governor Romney said in one of the debates, it's been able to decide not just who wins but who loses. And we have seen more and more of government's role be, I think, less and less by design. And sometimes when I use that word corruption, I'm actually not talking about something that may be illegal. It may just be a worldview that has overtaken things. And if you think about our system our American system of living together and our Missouri Constitution, I think we've strayed significantly from what our Constitution demands, and that is economic freedom and a respect for certain rights and values. And whether it is the kinds of corruptions you see around entities like the sort of MHDC or others, where people really wonder where their tax dollars are going, or it's the kind of corruption where people or businesses are claiming from the state something that they're not entitled to, whether it's benefits from the state or tax credits or whatever. We have a significant problem that we have to address, and that's around corruption. I intend to be a part of that. The second is an initiative we talked about called Protection from Government Overreach. One obvious one is when the federal government intrudes past its constitutional limits. That includes, in my mind, at least the lawsuit around Obamacare, which is now aspects of it have been settled. Other aspects of it will continue to be addressed over the coming years. But it also has to do with things like Dodd-Frank, a law that if you speak to bankers and small businesses is having a significant detrimental effect on our Missouri businesses and banks and all of our citizens. Those overreaches, another example is the EPA, which has grown past where it's been. Those overreaches, it seems to me, strike at the very heart of our Constitution and need to be addressed. And other attorneys general are doing that. I intend to be a part of addressing that. But protection from government overreach also means when local governments reach beyond their constitutional bounds, like eminent domain abuse, like regulatory taking, like government overreaching in the way it does business and keeping its business secret or hidden from view. All of those aspects, we need an attorney general who will be on the side of the people. Just as our attorneys general's offices over the course of 35 years have developed a significant program for what's called consumer protection, and rightly so, we need to have an initiative and a movement for protection from government overreach so that people can count on the regular nature of the Constitution and the rule of law, certainty for themselves and their families and their businesses. The last priority that I would say is we have many young men and women that are coming home from 2 wars, and they're facing significant problems. And other states, in particular Virginia, have had an attorney general who has addressed the fact that our state has certain obligations to these men and women, because it's not enough to say we're going to address some problem where there may be some sort of good or bad effect on people. Our men and women are coming home, and because of their illnesses, they're committing suicide, too many of them. And so one of the things that an attorney general can do is make sure that the law that is obligating our state to help individuals, as well as the federal law. It's not the Attorney General's job to particularly enforce that, but as the legal advocate, he can be talking about that. I think we have to not make the mistakes that we made after Vietnam, when we had a generation of men, mostly men at the time, come home and deal with those issues. So those are 3 initiatives. I thank you for your time, and I ask the listeners for their vote on November 6th for Ed Martin for Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 candidates here present tonight for the state representative position for the 49th District. Pamela Murray is the Democratic candidate. We'll allow you 1 minute to introduce yourself.
I'm Pam Murray. In the 1980s, I lived in Cole County and worked in healthcare at the Old Memorial Community Hospital, Columbia Regional Hospital, and for a Medicare contractor reviewing claims for accuracy and quality of care. More recently, I served 7 years on the Holt Summit City Council, improving services by getting sidewalks by our elementary school, more police officers on the beat, and improving parks, all without a tax increase. We found and cut unnecessary expenditures. For the past 6 years, I've been part of the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Mid-Missouri Regional Planning Commission, organizations that make recommendations about federal funding to cities and counties. On a monthly basis, I've been in meetings with city officials and county commissioners from both Cole and Callaway counties, assessing priorities and making decisions. I'm in a good position to continue serving the communities of the 49th District.
And then your question, what are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how in your elected office will you address each of these issues?
The 3 issues are jobs and wages, education, and coordination with local officials. A major employer in both Callaway and Cole counties is the state. Employee wages are the lowest in the nation, and this has affected our local economy. Their lack of disposable income means local shops have lost sales and our tax revenues have suffered. At the same time, Missouri does not collect $629 million in taxes owed due to tax credits to special interests. That money is needed elsewhere. Our state auditor detailed this problem, yet the legislature has failed to act. I have the political will to say no to those who don't pay their fair share. Another employer is Ameren, Missouri. They sought legislation to finance an addition to the nuclear plant. There is bipartisan support for the plant and the jobs that it will bring, yet the majority party was unable to get a bill passed through both houses, perhaps because House Bill 1316 is an awful bill. I would introduce a clean bill that deals only with the plant, protects consumers, and allows Ameren to recoup their investment in a reasonable time. A statewide school funding formula was created to remove disparity between urban and rural school funding. It has never received the full funding needed to work. I will try to get it back on track. Every child has a right to a quality public education. Through education, we will have a skilled workforce and attract new businesses. Corporations look to public schools as an indicator of a community's priorities. They want the best for their children, and we must have the best for our children. I'm proud that the Missouri School Administrators PAC has chosen to endorse me. One of the reasons I'm running is because our legislators have acted without thought to local impacts of their actions. I'm often more interested in the buddy system than responding to folks back home. In 2010, there was a bill regarding classification of counties. Callaway County is affected, yet the presiding commissioner was never consulted. Cities within Callaway County will lose revenue as a result of that bill. When I, a city official, asked our representative about a possible corrective bill, she didn't want to talk about it and referred me to the Callaway Chamber of Commerce. The established lines of communication that I have with Mid-Missouri County, city, and other community leaders is something that I will build on to prevent such outrageous actions. As a legislator, I will not forget that I serve the district, the entire district. It takes working together to have a great community. There is value in putting issues ahead of partisan politics. The legislature is bogged down by hardliners who have become entrenched in gridlock. It doesn't have to be that way. It's possible to work together. We do it at the local level. And now let's talk taxes. Raising them should be a last resort. There are expenses and tax credits to be cut first. However, it is irresponsible to completely take the possibility off the table. Missouri's tax burden ranks in the bottom third of the nation, and I want to keep it that way. However, when it comes to taxing non-residents, we are at the wrong end of the ranking. We are 47 out of 50. Why are hardworking Missourians paying for outsiders? Our priorities today determine our future. My priorities are our children, working families, retirees, the elderly, and disabled, those without a voice who need an advocate at the Capitol. Thank you.
And the Republican candidate for that same office of state representative in the 49th district is Jeanie Riddle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Jeanie Riddle, currently state representative of District 20. I'm a lifelong Missourian. I graduated from McClure High School in St. Louis and Drury College in Springfield, Missouri. Went on to work at Southwestern Bell Telephone Company, downtown St. Louis, as an accounting supervisor. From there, I married my husband, Randy Riddle, and we will celebrate 35 years of marriage this December. He moved me to Callaway County, where we raised our 2 children. They have since married and blessed us with a grandson each. My husband and I lived and worked in our community, and we taught at the South Callaway School District for about 3 decades. I put in 28 years of teaching, which gave me a keen insight into Missouri kids, students, and their families. I am currently completing my 4th year in the House of Representatives. The last 2 years, my caucus elected me as the Assistant Majority Floor Leader to serve them and to better help us look at legislation. I'm here to run for District 49, representing Cole and Callaway. I'm asking for your vote to be your voice at the Capitol. Thank you very much.
And then the question for you, the 4-minute answer. What are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how in your elected office will you address each of these?
Thank you. The 3 issues that my constituents have talked to me about repeatedly are economic development, which is jobs, energy, and education, the 3 E's. I'm going to start with energy. Right now, we have on the table before us an opportunity not for a new technology, but a new industry, small modular nuclear reactors. We had an alliance of every one of our electric providers in the state speaking with one voice, saying we needed additional generation for electricity and we wanted nuclear to be part of that. Westinghouse, which is the gold standard for nuclear generation in the world, looked at the state of Missouri because of the alliance of our electric providers, because of the quality job that Ameren has done with providing electricity in a safe and abundant manner, and as looking at our policymakers. Senator Kehoe and I worked diligently together. He is a champion. Through a bipartisan effort in the House, we passed a bill to move nuclear forward. Senator Kehoe had the votes in the Senate, but was not allowed to have the opportunity to present it on the floor. Because of that work that we did at the Capitol, Westinghouse looked at Missouri specifically and Ameren to partner with them to be able to capture this new industry. Now, the technology we've been using in the military for decades, but this is to retrofit it in the commercial area. They've partnered with Burns and McDonnell's of Missouri and recently signed an agreement with the Missouri University System for research. The studies that have come out with this new industry facing Missouri is an estimate of 16,000 jobs to 20,000 new jobs, direct and indirect, to the state of Missouri, with an addition of $25 billion with a B dollars to the state economy. Enormous. Now, we'll move to education, and education is connected to this energy. We have, as I travel the state, have talked to a number of industries, and they've said we're missing a sector of our workforce. We have high school graduates, and then we have college graduates. And I might add that our college graduates are having trouble, many of them landing a good job that they can support their family and pay back that college loan. What we have is this segment of highly technically trained individuals, and there are jobs available with great salaries where they can support their families and have a good job. This is connected with the SMR industry, with some of the jobs there, but there are also currently jobs available that we are having to look elsewhere, or we're short on that workforce. So we're going to look in that manner to be able to make sure that our high schools have things in place so that they can move forward with that. In addition, when we're looking at our schools, we have 55,000 students in unaccredited schools in this state. It's not okay. And if it were your child, you would see that we would make some changes. And so we're going to look at some education reform. Economic development, we've talked about the 20,000 possibility jobs. There's some regulatory issues that are facing our current business owners in this state, where we're fighting our own State Department in order for them to grow and to be able to add more employees, Missouri citizens, to their jobs. So with that, I'll say I've been endorsed by the Missouri Chamber of Commerce, our small business owners with the NFIB, our large industry, our ag industry. I've received the Friend of the Farm Bureau Award the last 2 sessions. On a personal note, I am profoundly pro-life and have been endorsed by Missouri Right to Life, and the Second Amendment is enormous to me, and I have an A+ rating with the NRA. Lastly, specifically to Callaway County, which affects every district in this state, is the Fulton State Hospital and the safety issue facing our employees who are working there. I've been endorsed by the Missouri State Firefighters Council, and I'm asking for your vote and to be your voice in the Capitol. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeanie. For the 59th District, we have Mike Bernskoetter, who is the Republican candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. And I'd like to thank the Chamber and the young professionals also for putting together this forum. I'd also like to thank all the people in the audience for your interest in government. Like Mr. Newell said, my name is Mike Bernskoetter. I'm running for the newly formed 59th District, which is basically the rural part of Cole County. And I'm presently the state rep for the 113th District, which is the eastern part of Cole County. I'm married for 32 years. My wife, Jeanette. We have 4 kids, 2 daughter-in-laws, 2 grandkids. Jeanette and I have owned Arts Pest Control for the last 26 years, and we've been very active in the community. I'm past president of the East Side Business Association, and I've also been active on the statewide level. I'm past president of the Missouri Pest Management Association.
Then we'll give you your 4-minute question. What are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how in your elected office will you address each of these issues?
Well, I'd say the first one is jobs. Like Representative Riddle said, one of the main things we've been working on is the SMR technology for over at Callaway. That would be one way we could get jobs. And another thing we could do is to reduce the regulation burdens on small business. They're constantly having to go through all kinds of hoops to start and stay in business, and I think we need to figure out a way to reduce the regulations on them. And also on a local level, I'd like to see something done with the Missouri State Penitentiary. We continue to have talks on that to see if we can figure out a way to utilize that opportunity there. And secondly, education, just like Representative Riddle said, education is the thing we need to work on. There's a lot of failing schools, and we need to train our kids for the jobs of the future. And thirdly, we were able to get our state employees a pay raise this year, but we're still 50th out of 50th, so we'd still like to continue to work on improving the employees' wages. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on to the 60th District, and here we have the Republican candidate, Jason J. Barnes.
Thank you, Frank. I'm Jay Barnes. I'm running for re-election in Jefferson City. I've spent the past 2 years working hard for you in the Capitol. I've lived in Jefferson City most of my life. I'm married. I have 3 kids, all 4 years old or younger, including a 3-month-old. I'm an attorney at Barnes & Associates here in Jeff City. I'm pro-life, pro-free markets, pro-state employees. Been endorsed by the largest organization of state employees in our state. Been endorsed by the largest organization of small business in the state. Beyond what I'd call high-profile issues, I've also been heavily involved in what I just call good government. I've served on more committees, 14 at last count, than any member of the House or the Senate. Won several awards from nonpartisan, non-ideological organizations for my work to improve the lives of ordinary Missourians, including the Missouri Bar, the NAACP, Missouri Association of Workforce Housing. Passed several bills that mean a world of difference to Missourians that don't get the headlines. You can learn more about those bills at my website, which is barnesformissouri.com, or I'm going to have some ads in the News Tribune coming up. Finally, if you want to know where I stand on an issue, all you got to do is ask. I think voters appreciate that honesty and leadership.
Then your 4-minute question: what are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how, in your elected office, will you address each of these issues?
I think the top 3 issues for Jefferson City are first, state employees, second, energy/jobs, and third, tax credits. As far as state employees, I've been the vice chairman of the House Budget Committee for General Administration, which oversees state employee benefits. I'm happy to report that the last 2 years, benefits have stayed stable, and I've held the administration's feet to the fire to make sure that's the case. 2 years ago, I held off an amendment in that committee which would have cut 250 jobs of folks who work right here in Cole County. I've asked to be on that committee again. Hope I'm at least the vice chairman, maybe the chairman of it, so I can protect state employees. Secondly, pay raises. Everybody knows the 50 out of 50 stat. Last year, the governor proposed a 1% pay raise for state employees. The 3 representatives you see sitting up here today went immediately to work with the House Budget Chair and with the Senate Budget Chair to make sure and to double that pay raise for the employees who needed it most. And we were successful in doing that because we all have good relationships with those individuals. I think that's important to know, and we're going to have good relationships with the next budget chairs. Finally, I'll fight for those pay raises every year until I think we need to get where we're even with our cost of living nationwide. And of course, I've been endorsed by the largest organization of state employees in the state. The second issue is small modular nuclear reactors. Folks are entitled to their own opinions, but not to their own facts. The reason the bill 2 years ago didn't pass wasn't because it was a bad bill. It was because of one person in the Senate and his enabler, who was the Senate pro tem. Those are the facts. What we're talking about now is we've moved on to a potential $1.2 trillion industry. Jeanie says it's $25 billion. That's 1 year. I'm looking over 40 years. We're talking about $1.1 billion per reactor, 1,100 reactors over potentially built and manufactured right here and shipped all around the world. That would make us the Silicon Valley of small modular nuclear reactors. It would create such a boost to our economy, we would not know what to do with all of the jobs in mid-Missouri. That would be a great thing, and in the next 2 years, I plan to do anything and everything I can to encourage that development. Finally, tax credits. 3 issues with tax credits. The first is accountability and oversight. I chaired a committee that looked into a massive failure in Moberly, Missouri. Turns out DED is not doing due diligence on economic development projects. I sponsored a bill that would fix that. I'm going to continue to sponsor that bill until it becomes law. It got held up in the Senate like a lot of other things did, even though the governor could have adopted it on his own, too. That's a long story for another day. Also sponsored a bill that a reporter for Bloomberg News said was the best bill in the entire country that she'd seen to rein in abuses of Wall Street investment banks involved in municipal bonding around the country. That bill also got caught up in the Senate. That bill also will be added as an amendment onto every tax credit bill that comes out of the House from now until I'm no longer in the House of Representatives, because we need to stand up for Main Street against Wall Street banks pushing projects that they ought to know better than. Second issue is effectiveness. The most famous tax credit program is the Quality Jobs Act. Turns out, 6 years into it, 6 out of 7 Quality Jobs Act authorizations, which I would deem massive projects, are failures. My committee is going to look into those numbers starting in January, and if it turns out your tax dollars are going to be wasted, we're going to have the courage to say this program ought to be ended despite the special interests that are in favor of it. Finally, the last one is historic tax credits. If you walk around downtown Jeff City, any direction you look, you probably see a building that can be improved with historic tax credits. There are folks in the Senate who have their eyes on eliminating the historic tax credits. I've been their biggest defender. I'll continue to be their biggest defender because I think it's a program that works for Jeff City and the rest of our state. With that, again, if you have any questions on any issue, I'm open and honest and always tell you what I think. I think voters appreciate that honesty, and if you appreciate that kind of leadership, I'd ask for your vote on November 6th.
We'll move on then to the county offices, and we'll begin that. And by the way, we're following the format that is the same as the ballot, so there's no particular order that is done out of favoritism. It's just the way they landed on the ballot. The county commissioner for Eastern District, we have the Democratic candidate, Ed Williams, and I'm going to try to do this correctly. I'll give each of you 1 minute, then I'll go back and do the 4 minute instead of the way I messed up and did it over there. So we'll start with 1 minute to introduce yourself. Mr. Williams, please.
I think several of my life story can be told with several different numbers. First, I've lived in Cole County for 31 years. I've had one wife, Carol, and next month we will be married 38 years. We've raised 2 sons, now both adults. I have 2 college degrees. The last one is an MA from the University of Missouri. And I've operated my own business in central Missouri, not exclusively in Cole County, but as a distributor to central Missouri for the last 20 years. I got really interested in local politics when transformations was a hot issue. I became chairman of the opposition to transformations, and that was a very good example of an unfair tax and poor planning. And I guess the population agreed with me because it was defeated 61% to 39%. My attempt to become commissioner is a continuation of that opposition to transformations for the same reasons. Thank you.
And Jeff Hoelscher is the Republican candidate, and 1 minute to introduce yourself, please.
All right, thank you. I'm Jeff Hoelscher, Cole County Eastern District Commissioner. I was elected in 2008. I'm a lifelong resident of Cole County. I graduated Blair Oaks High School and Lincoln University. I've got 2 sons. I own Hoelscher Enterprises, a construction and remodeling business. I'm also a licensed real estate broker and real estate agent. I'm a member of several civic and professional committees and organizations, Knights of Columbus, Lions Club, Home Builders Association, Jefferson City Area Board of Realtors, as well as the Eastside Business Association. I'm a current chair of that organization and was the chair of the Salute to America Foundation last year. I'm also a member of the Cole County Planning Commission. I've always been proactive in leadership opportunities, and 4 years ago when I ran, I thought I had the skills, the education, and the ability to do it, so I ran on that. Now I've got 4 years of experience doing this and leadership skills. I'm not afraid to take on serious issues, so I appreciate your vote November 6th.
We'll go back to Mr. Williams for the 4 minute question. Again, what are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how in your elected office will you address each of these issues, please?
The biggest issue in this election is absolute waste by the Cole County Commission. They found numerous ways to waste money and absolutely throw it away. More of them are on my website, williamsforcommissioner.com. But we'll just speak about the most outrageous right now, and that would be the new Cole County Jail. There was a plan, a very good plan, to build a new jail for $19 million. It's right here. It would be about 50% larger than the old jail, have as many prisoner spaces as this current jail has, and would be $19 million. Remember that figure. The commission came up with another plan, $45 million, more than twice as much. And now, among other things, it can't be paid for without taking money from other parts of Cole County government. I have some pictures on the website of the empty rooms in it, some of them. They are huge, and I'd suggest you take a look at it. It may be 40, 50, 60, 100 years. We may never need that property, and when it is, we'll probably have to remodel it. It'll be so old, and it can't be used for anything else. It's poorly planned in every way. The current commission has disregarded the needs for citizens and their wishes. A group of residents near Wren Swamp, once known as Wren's Lake, had an experienced contractor in financing to rebuild the dam and lake, and they never got a chance. The commission took over the property and demanded $200,000 from these residents before they would allow them to take the land and use it. To do that and to rebuild the lake and the dam would have been about a total of $400,000, and they just couldn't do it. The residents were treated very shabbily, and it's disgraceful. We now have a swamp where we might have had a lake, and we must do something in that area before spring sets in and we get mosquitoes. Now, I have one other topic, and this is not something you're going to read about in the News Tribune. The News Tribune has decided to protect their friends on this one, as I think they do quite often, and you probably won't see much coverage of me and its conflict of interest. Jeff Hoelscher worked for Bob Scruggs as a contractor, and I guess still does. Therefore, when Bob Scruggs had the power to increase or decrease Hoelscher's income, Scruggs is, I believe, the outgoing chairman of the board of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and they asked for $150,000 of tax money be given to them. Jeff Hoelscher should have abstained, but there was a problem there. Chris Wrigley, for his own reasons, abstained, so he voted for it. That was a very direct conflict of interest and should have never been done. The Cole County Treasury is not an ATM for the ridiculous ideas from the Chamber of Commerce or the ATM for the Chamber's parties. I'm optimistic that I can work with the Western District Commissioner, whomever he is, to give better planning and better use for your money. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Hoelscher, again, the question for 4 minutes. What are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how in your elected office will you address each of these issues?
All right, thank you. Preserving your property values and protecting your property rights is probably one of the biggest issues. And if we want to talk about things in the past, let's talk about Renz Lake and what I did to try to preserve their value of their land. They had the property out there. On December 31st, 2009, I voted against taking the title and deed to the property. I didn't think that we needed to take it over. The other two just thought we needed to, so they voted for it. We got the property. We were stuck with it, so we had to do something with it. I worked with the folks out in that area trying to come up with something to help them get a lake back to preserve their property value. I've got an email that when we decided we was going to get a consultant, I think to the tune of $41,250 to pay a consultant to give us ideas what we can do, which I already had an idea what we could do. We could turn it back into a lake. Let's put that back into becoming a lake. I sent an email to several of the people out there. If you want a copy of the email, I'd be glad to send it to you. Just contact me. Told them I'd rather spend $41,000 on helping them turn that back into a lake rather than throw it towards a consultant. I never got any responses from it, and so I actually tried to help them. The second thing was budget, and I'll go back to Renz Lake there again. Budget-wise, it was going to cost us $200,000 to turn it back into a lake. That's not fiscal responsibility. So we can let it go back to a natural vegetative state. If the folks out there still want it, they can still come get it. I will give it to them for $1. Actually, that's negotiable. I'll give it to them for a penny so they can have it back. Now, it's going to cost them a little bit to turn it back into a lake, but that's their prerogative. They can still do it if they want to, and I'll be glad to work with them. The third thing, and it's budget related to, is along the same lines as the state employees. You don't hear about it a lot in the county, but we do have county employees that do not have competitive salaries. I've met with the auditor. I want to work with him to try to make some kind of salary pool or something that we can do to get their wages up there to be competitive to keep good employees. Cole County is a wonderful place to live. There's not many people that can't make it to work when it rains or when it snows. Some people don't when it rains either, but they're just bad drivers. I'm not going to hold it against them. Other stuff that with your protecting your property value and your rights, we've got zoning coming up, and that's going to be a huge issue. We're going to work with the zoning advisory committee, and you know, we had a committee that kind of made suggestions on what to do with the jail, the new law enforcement center. I wasn't around when we started building it and made that decision. I was around when we built it under budget. We got it done, and that was one of my biggest things when I ran was government cannot build anything within their budget. They always have overruns. We built it under budget. We had $1 million left over thereabouts. So zoning is going to be something that you don't want to be too restrictive or over regulatory. So when we work with that, it's going to be something that's going to help with promoting health and safety and general welfare of the public. It lets you know what you can and can't do with your property and what people can do with the property that's adjacent to you, so you'll be able to continue to build. I'm going to continue to vote on stuff that's in the budget, even though I might be involved with people like Mr. Scruggs, who is a local business owner, and he employs several people in this county and even outside of the county. I'm not related to him. It's not nepotism. If it was nepotism, which is unethical and illegal, I would recuse myself from a vote like a purchasing agent, which we have, which I thought was a good idea to have too. As far as spending budget money, can we pay 20 people, one for each of the 13 elected officials and one for the other 7 departments, or do we have one purchasing agent that knows what she's doing and gets it done? You don't have 20 people. I think that's it for me. I appreciate your vote November 6th.
For Western District Commissioner, we have Stella, the Democratic candidate, and we'll start with your 1-minute introduction, please.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. I'm a U.S. Navy Air vet. I did my college at IIT in Chicago. I'm married to Margaret for 52 years. I was 10 and she was 9 when we got married. We've got 3 children and 9 grandchildren. We came to Jefferson City in late 1984 when we opened the Ponderosa Steakhouse, and since then it opened 2 more. We retired in the year 2000 from the restaurant, but we had 30 years as small business owners. I did 2 terms on the city council, so I got familiar with budgets both in the city and privately. In the city, you keep the budget because that's what they tell you to do, and maybe there's even a statute covering it. If you do it in private, you do that. The thing that keeps you doing that is to keep from going broke. So we had a pretty successful run. Thank you.
And then we'll do the 4-minute question. What are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and what, in your elected office, will you, or how will you address each of these issues?
I think the top issue that faces a commissioner is safety. Now, safety not only from catching the bad guys, but keeping your roads and bridges safe so that you can navigate them without running into potholes and all the whatnot that goes with it, safe in bad weather. The second would be jobs. I would want to make sure that we're staffed so that we can cover all these things. I would like to make sure that the people who we do hire for these jobs are paid a proper wage. Right now they're going through one of the budget processes of buying the health insurance for the people that work for the county. They want to up the deductible from $1,000 to $2,000. Some of those people are in an area where $2,000 is a lot of money to have to put up. If I had my druthers, I'd put a stop to it. We have about 300 employees with the county. We have roughly 400 square miles in the county. There's 27 police officers that are in traffic that cover that. It would seem to me that we could improve on that situation. But the biggest thing is to keep good employees here, to find a way to help them out, increase their wages, and that's something that I would work very hard toward. We've got a very complex area here with attorneys, nurses, engineers, heavy equipment operators, police, office, and of course office personnel. So we've got a very complex county. And seeing to it that all of those people are fairly taken care of and that we retain good employees, I think that's a very important issue. Third on the list would be the budget. To spend money irresponsibly would be wrong. But if somebody gave me my choices and they said fix a road or follow the budget, I'd probably would lean in terms of safety. Now that's the way I feel about it. I see that primarily we have a pretty well-run county. We have the ambulance service, and that is a situation I'd like to look into. It would seem to me that we could have a better distribution of where we keep the ambulances so that it is not always that the fire department gets their head of the ambulances. Other than that, and other issues would be just a daily routine of running the commissioner's office. As for all of us, it's a learning process. There's no training program to be a commissioner. You got to use some good common sense, listen to everything that all of the different departments have to say, and then act upon it in a proper manner. Well, I'm asking for your vote on November 6th. Thank you very much.
And we'll move on then to the clerk of the circuit court. Mary Lou Hemmel is the Democratic candidate. We'll give you 1 minute to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening. Throughout my career with the circuit court, nearly 18 years, I have taken on progressively greater responsibility. From 2000 to 2004, I served as Chief Deputy Clerk and Criminal Division Supervisor. In 2004, I left the Circuit Clerk's office to assume the position of Court Administrator, a position that I was appointed by the judges of the court. I answered to them and not our former Circuit Clerk. I was appointed as Circuit Clerk on May 2nd of this year and immediately took on the challenge of getting the office back on track. I have restored integrity to the office, providing efficient, honest, accountable service to the circuit court and Cole County taxpayers. The transition from the former clerk has been difficult, but is largely complete. I have the institutional knowledge, and I am committed to serving the people of Cole County. I am very dedicated and passionate about my job right now. As your circuit clerk, I am a proven supervisor and leader. Know accounting and fiscal management. Know the operations of the Cole County Circuit Clerk's office. Communicates with the public and with the staff. Promise transparency in all aspects of the Circuit Clerk's office. Trustworthy and accountable to the people of Cole County, you can be confident that the work is being monitored, recorded, and handled properly. On the job right now, providing outstanding service as your Circuit Clerk.
And then Donnell Davidson is the Republican candidate for the same office.
Good evening. Well, I was born in Kansas, but my father has moved us around quite a bit because he served for 20 years in the U.S. Air Force. After he retired, he moved us to this community where I've been here for more than 30 years. I feel that Jefferson City is my home, and I attended East School and graduated from Jefferson City High School. And shortly after that, I began working at the Circuit Clerk's office in Cole County. I did a variety of jobs, but I eventually was trusted to oversee the operations and finances of the criminal division. In 2005, I was recruited by the Office of State Courts Administrator, where I've been responsible for leading teams in developing training courses and implementing court staff across the state of Missouri. Not only do I show a strong leadership professionally, but I'm involved civically in many fine organizations in our community, such as the Rape and Abuse Crisis Services, Jefferson City's Cultural Arts Commissions, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and the VFW, which is very dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about my job and my community, and I feel that I will be the best candidate for the Circuit Clerk's office.
Then Ms. Hemmel will turn to you for the 4-minute question. What are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how in your elected office will you address each one of these issues? Please.
Well, immediately after taking office, I had to address many issues within the Circuit Clerk's office. This is what has been accomplished. I am working on enhancing the services and resources available to individuals, seeking input from the legal profession and the general public, making every effort possible to make sure the records are accurate, improving the operations of the office, increased employees' awareness of the need for change. But the main three issues I really want to address with you this evening are, number one, I have restored integrity and honesty. There's nothing more important than trust we as citizens place in our government and our elected officials. Cole County deserves honesty and integrity. Honesty encourages open communication. It leads to effective relationships in our organization. I have been open about policy and changes within the circuit clerk's office. If elected, I will continue to serve you with integrity and honesty. That's the most important promise I can make this evening to you. Number two, I am dedicated to provide and promote the best quality of employee development and training. We all know an employee who receives the necessary training is better able to perform their jobs. They become more aware of the proper procedures for basic tasks. Training builds employees' confidence to help them excel. This is what I am providing and seeing today. Cole County circuit clerks are excelling. I had several clerks from my office come and thank me for giving them the opportunity to learn. Here's a quote from one of the deputy clerks that touched my heart. "I've learned more about case processing, Mary Lou, since you took office than I have in the past 5 years. Thank you for providing me the training and development I needed so desperately. It's amazing what I have learned." Wow, that says it all right there, doesn't it? Shortly after taking office, I reviewed employees' transcripts provided by the Office of the State Court Administrator and talked to each clerk about their training and development needs. I was shocked when I saw the clerks over the last 5 years had only received minimal training. They weren't able to do their jobs efficiently. I am delighted to report the clerks have received many hours of training and development over the last 5 months. I've provided over 1,000 hours of training and development to the clerks since my appointment in May. It's been a win-win situation for my employees and the organization. Number three, most importantly, I'm protecting the funds of the court and the Cole County taxpayers' money. As you probably know, there were some well-publicized issues in the office under the previous circuit clerk that cited problems including missing money, poor accounting procedures, and internal controls. After I left the clerk's office in 2004, as early as 2005, excuse me, I started expressing my concerns about the way the office of the circuit clerk was being run. Over the last 7 years, I consistently raised concerns about the internal controls and the day-to-day operations. I reported my findings and recommendations to the former circuit clerk and the presiding judge. Several other sources, including the Office of the State Court Administrator, made recommendations as well, but they were all ignored by the former circuit clerk. Today, I'm happy to report that we are making good progress. In July, the auditor's office returned for a follow-up audit and reviewed the court's financial records, internal controls, and procedures. They commended our progress and accomplishments. The auditor's report is available as you leave today. I work long hours and have accomplished much. I am asking for your vote and support. Thank you.
Ms. Davidson, your 4 minute for the question. What are the top 3 issues facing your constituency, and how in your elected office will you address each of these issues? Thank you.
Well, first I would like to create a systems of checks and balances of the funds in the office by reorganizing it and creating a financial division director. By doing so, there will be multiple layers of accountability. My opponent has talked about the state auditor's report and has followed their guidelines provided by them, but if you read the report, it indicates that most of all these recommendations were implemented prior to her taking the office. The follow-up report does show that recommendations have been followed, and I am glad, but these to me are basic accounting responsibilities and should have been in place years ago. Reorganizing the clerk's office to include a financial division director would bring an experienced person with a background in accounting and a person responsible to work with the circuit clerk to ensure all records and monies are accountable in a most efficient manner possible. Misappropriations of funds will not happen while I'm in office. Handling money is just a portion of what this office is about. The circuit clerk's main responsibility is to preserve and manage all of the court documents and the records with the highest degree of integrity and security. Cole County needs a well-developed and trained staff, and the only way to do that is to hire quality staff and retain them. Right now, the circuit clerk's office has more than 18 employees, and only one of those employees have been there longer than 5 years. 2 of which did not have, 7 employees since my opponent has taken office have left, 2 of which did not have employment, one of those with a 1.5 years away from retirement. I believe there needs to be a change in administration. One will help promote a team environment, one that will help develop a staff professionally, and one that will respect the job that they are doing. Providing this kind of environment will retain staff, and I will do that. The last issue I believe faces the clerk's office is preparing for the future. For the past few years, OSCA has been developing Missouri's e-filing system, which is a paperless court. You will find circuit clerk's offices across the state are scanning documents to cut costs, space, and maintain an accurate court record. Cole County is not utilizing this technology to its fullest potential, and to my knowledge lacks a plan to scan previous disposed cases, eliminate storage, and cut costs. To prepare e-filing, it's imperative that all filings be scanned and all court staff is properly trained to maintain the accuracy of the court's record. Once elected, I plan to create a project plan to ensure that the Cole County court system keeps up with today's trends and technology. So to recap, I'd like to reorganize the office to create a financial division director for accountability with layers of checks and balances. Training and developing a quality staff to retain employees so resources are not used training employees over and over. And also to keep up with today's technology and offer a future for Cole County. I'm asking for your vote November 6th.
This concludes then our candidates portion. We're going to take a 10-minute intermission, and I would like to make it exactly 10 minutes, so set your watches. I have 20 after 8. We'll begin again at 8:30 this evening. This is your opportunity to take a break, to talk to the candidates if you'd like. We're coming back to discuss the important issues that will also be on the ballot November 6th. Second portion, and this is equally as important, if not more important, because there are so many issues on the ballot this time. We have proponents and opponents in many of the cases. In either case, each speaker that has responded to our request to make their presentation tonight will have 5 minutes to speak, and we'll begin with the Constitutional Amendment number 3, which is on the ballot. Randy Scheer is with Missourians for Fair and Impartial Courts, and he will begin with 5 minutes.
Thank you, Brian. In 1938, we had a group of citizens that came together to try to draft a procedure and process whereby they eliminate the corruption that's occurring in the selection of judges in the state. In 1940, the voters overwhelmingly adopted what is now referred to as the Missouri Nonpartisan Court Plan. That court plan has been taken across the country and has been copied in whole or in part by as many as 34 states and is recognized as the probably currently the best way to select nonpartisan judges. That amendment was reaffirmed in 1942, again in 1945. It was slightly amended in 1972. And today, we have a group of wealthy individuals and some special interests that are attempting to change
that process because they don't like the way it's done and they cannot control it. Amendment 3 makes a few changes to Article 5 of the Constitution. It would raise the number of panel members from 3 to 4 that are submitted to the governor for his selection. It changes the composition of the Appellate Judicial Commission. This is the commission that submits the 3 panel members to the governor, by eliminating the Supreme Court judge as a voting member, by replacing that person with a non-voting retired judge, and then it changes the makeup of the appointments by the governor. Currently, the governor gets 3 lay appointments. The other 3 members on the commission, on the 7-member commission, are lawyers that are selected by the appellate districts, by the lawyers, or within the appellate districts, by the lawyers in those appellate districts. This change in the makeup of the panel would allow the governor to appoint 4 public members, all 4 of those within his single term, and that would be the majority vote of the commission. There's only 4 members. There are 7 votes on that commission currently, but this plan would eliminate the Supreme Court judge and still leave 7 members, but 4 of those would be totally controlled by the gubernatorial appointment. That change, we feel, is what is detrimental to the plan. It would allow those to become political appointments, and it would inject politics into the process. We're not so concerned about the other minor changes, and they are, in some cases, modest, as the proponents are describing them. But the ability for the governor to make 4 appointments controlling the 4 votes or the majority of the votes on the commission, we think would be detrimental to the plan. I'll stop there. We would urge a no vote on Amendment 3. I would add, we have a coalition put together on this campaign. The coalition is made up of Chambers of Commerce. It's made up of AARP, League of Women Voters. We have all the lawyer groups, obviously. We have other businesses involved in this. It is a broad-based coalition in opposition to Amendment 3, and we would certainly urge you to oppose it.
Thank you, Randy. We'll move on to Proposition A, Aaron Baker with A Safer Missouri. We'll have 5 minutes.
I appreciate this opportunity that you all have put together tonight to talk about these ballot issues. A lot of times voters get to the polls on Election Day and they're quite surprised to see several questions on their ballot. This one's quite interesting. Proposition A, I live in a small town of 400 people, and it will shock my neighbors and friends who I haven't been able to talk to this about yet, that it's St. Louis police are going to be on their ballot. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of history in this issue, and then I'm going to talk about why I am supportive of it, and we have such a broad coalition in support of the project. In the Civil War times, our state, our pro-Confederacy leaning state, took control of the St. Louis police force to basically disarm the city of St. Louis, a pro-Union city. At that time, that was a kind of normal for states to do that in their largest cities. And then it became to where we are today, that only 2 cities in the entire nation don't have control of their police force. This is a third of the budget of the city of St. Louis, their police force. In a non-binding referendum on the issue, almost 70% of St. Louis residents, St. Louis voters, voted in favor in 2010, saying we would like to have local control of our police force. This initiative to restore local control back to the city of St. Louis where it belongs is supported by some of the most liberal organizations that I don't agree with at all, and some of the most conservative Tea Party evangelical groups in the state as well, as mayors from the city of St. Louis, the city of Kansas City, Jefferson City, Columbia, more than 80 lawmakers, and we almost have endorsements from all 114 counties in Missouri. And the reason why is not only does this initiative, local control, make sense, and wherever you are on the political spectrum, most of us agree that local control, government governing closest to home is best. It also saves taxpayers nearly $4 million on the local and state level. Again, where I live in a rural county, Cole County, obviously in the middle of the state, if you have trouble with law enforcement and you live in the city, you call your city councilman or you call your mayor. If you live in the county, you might call some of the commissioners that were here, or you might call Sheriff Greg White. But if you live in the city of St. Louis and you have a problem with law enforcement, you are supposed to pick up the phone and call the governor and talk to the governor's office about appointing people to a statewide commission that has governance over the police force in St. Louis. And to me, that distance in between the voters and the people and the governance of the police force, that disconnect just doesn't make sense. So for those of us that live in this area and rural areas, please don't be surprised to see local control of the St. Louis police force on your ballot. I would encourage a yes vote on Proposition A. We have control of our law enforcement. Another thing that I will add, if a law enforcement official, if a member of the law enforcement happens to make a mistake, God forbid they make a large mistake and there's a lawsuit involved with a large payout, the state of Missouri is liable for that payout, as these folks are basically state employees. So all of us in this room, unless you're from the city of St. Louis or Kansas City, have local control of our police force. I would encourage a yes vote to give St. Louis theirs. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gary Wiegert with vote no on Prop A.
Yes, my name is Gary Wiegert. I'm a police officer, 32 years in St. Louis City. For 6 years, I was president of the St. Louis Police Officers Association, which is the union. Right now, I'm the unpaid registered lobbyist with the St. Louis Tea Party. Some of the things that you will see coming up in this ballot, one of the wording is, I believe it states that it may or may not save $3.5 million. Now, I'm not coming through. Is that it? Okay, I believe in the legislation it says it may or may not save $3.5 million, or that when that type of wording is stated, that means we don't know what it's going to save. There's talk about saving the $6 million that has been spent since '06. What happened there was Matt Blunt stepped up because St. Louis is a very litigious area. I've been sued numerous times. He stepped up and he picked up the role on that because Missouri caps these lawsuits. St. Louis, the juries were awarding heavy lawsuits, and he stepped up to save the city taxpayer that money. And yes, they do pick that up, and that is probably something St. Louis should pay for themselves. I want to talk a little bit, we talk about unintended consequences when bills are passed. I want to talk about some of the intended consequences here. A deal was cut with the St. Louis Police Officers Association. They've always been against local control. When I was president of that group, they were against local control. And what they got was a collective bargaining agreement was signed, and also fair share was implemented for St. Louis police officers. And for those of you who don't know what fair share is the forcing of taking of money from non-members and giving it to the union. I think that is wrong, and I think that is one of the consequences of this bill. Also, what happened was when you're tried as a St. Louis police officer, if you're charged with a crime or malfeasance, that is open to the public. I like that the media can show up and watch the proceedings that go on. The media, the public, they can stay informed. Under this change, if you vote yes, what this does is it goes to a civil service commission. That, in fact, is closed, and you only find out if the officer at charge is guilty. If he's not guilty, you don't even know the name of the officer. I think that is wrong. When the people voted 70% in St. Louis in support of local control, that was because they wanted an more open process with review boards. Now the people who were for local control are actually against it now in St. Louis City. And that's the NAACP and the ACLU have come out against that. Now, also, when we look at what goes on with, well, here's another unintended consequence. Because I practiced my fair speech rights here and testified against this in Jefferson City, the union now has thrown me out of the union. I'm the first person ever thrown out of that union. Here's another consequence out there that wasn't foreseen. Two groups have come out in support of local control, La Raza and Kansas City Latino Civic Collective. And here's why they came out for this, because they want sanctuary cities. And luckily, the state of Missouri has stepped in and stopped that, but local control, this is part of the unintended consequence. They want local control for Kansas City and St. Louis, so that way it can make it easier to become sanctuary cities. Right now, I will talk against who's against Prop A. Tea Party groups: St. Louis Tea Party, K&N Patriots, Jefferson County Tea Party. St. Louis City Central Republican Committee, St. Louis County Republican Central Committee, Jefferson County Republican Club, the following townships: Concord Village, Gravois, Tesson Ferry, Northwest Airport, and Wild Horse. Here is who is a list of people who are for local control. I have the AFL-CIO, City County Democratic Central Committee, St. Louis Labor Council, La Raza, and this Kansas City Latino Civic. I believe there is one conservative type group. And real quickly, I got 1 minute left, and I want to talk about a little bit about corruption in St. Louis City. We don't want that inserted into our police department. And I'll give you a quick little example. Mayor Slay hired a law firm called Thompson Coburn, paid them $250,000 to set up a separate pension system for the firemen. He probably plans on doing that for the police officers too. They set up the separate pension system outside of state supervision, and in return, they kicked back $40,000 to his campaign. I do not want in the future, when we buy a taser or a gun or any product for the police department, I do not want that to be contingent upon a contribution to Mayor Slay's campaign. And so I thank you for allowing me to come speak. I know we're running out of time here. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I ask that you vote no on Prop A.
Thank you both. We'll move on to Proposition B. Misty Snodgrass with the Missourians for Health and Education. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for attending. Proposition B came about a couple years ago when Missouri became the lowest tobacco tax state in the country. And we came together as a broad bipartisan coalition with numerous members from across the state that wanted to increase the tobacco tax and provide local funding for local public schools, as well as to help kids from ever starting to smoke. Those were the two main goals when we formed the coalition. And so Proposition B, we turned in over 200,000 signatures in May to the Secretary of State. We were certified and will be on the ballot in November. Proposition B is endorsed by every health organization in the state of Missouri, from doctors to hospitals to nurses, and every of the three voluntaries: American Heart Association, American Cancer Society, and the American Lung Association. Additionally, it's endorsed by almost all the major education organizations, such as the NEA, the National Education Association, the Missouri School Board Association, the Missouri School Administrators, and they are the principals and superintendents here in the state of Missouri, among many other groups that have endorsed the measure. And what it does is it increases the tobacco tax by 73 cents per pack. It also increases the tax on other tobacco products. And what it does is it will help provide much needed revenue to every local public school in the state of Missouri. For example, here in Jefferson City, it would be $1.3 million in new revenue for the state of Missouri. There are numerous safeguards in the measure. This is very different from the lottery money, very different from the gaming money. There are three specific safeguards that are not that were not in those measures. The first one being there's annual audits of the fund. Second, the money is to be treated as new money and additional revenue. And thirdly, it's put into a separate trust fund. This was designed after a similar measure that passed, Proposition C, and there has never been any attempts to rate it by the General Assembly. Missouri has some of the highest smoking rates in the country, the highest lung cancer deaths in the country, and some of the lowest life expectancy in this country. This would generate $283 million per year. The first few years it would be higher. The auditor is estimated at approximately $400 million per year, and we believe the floor is about $283 million per year. This measure not only provides much needed revenue for local public schools, it also provides revenue for colleges and universities. 30% of the money would go towards colleges and universities. So 50% of the money would go towards local public schools, 30% for colleges and universities throughout the state of Missouri. 20% would go towards tobacco prevention and cessation. Currently, the state of Missouri spends $0 on tobacco prevention and cessation. And so this would provide much needed revenue to help Missourians who want to quit smoking do so. Furthermore, this measure will save lives. And that's why, as a member and a representative of the American Cancer Society, we are so supportive of this measure. We know that increasing the tobacco tax does two things. It helps adults quit smoking, and it helps keep our kids from ever starting to smoke. This measure will prevent 40,000 kids from ever becoming addicted smokers. Additionally, 33,000 adults will quit smoking. We know that employers are facing increasing healthcare costs and lost productivity due to smoking and tobacco-related illness and disease. Furthermore, the state of Missouri spends $532 million per year on Medicaid. We only collect $95 million on our current tobacco tax at 17 cents. By increasing it by 73 cents, we'll still be in the bottom third of the country with our tobacco tax. The national average is $1.49. Our border states is $1.02. So we'll still be below majority of our border states. So I would encourage everyone to vote yes on Proposition B. And you can go to, if you would like for more information, you can go to the website at www.showmeabrighterfuture.com. Thank you so much.
Ron Leone will speak on behalf of the vote no on the Proposition B.
Frank, thank you this evening. I also want to thank our hosts, the young professionals of the Jefferson City Area Chamber of Commerce. I appreciate the opportunity. For those of you here today listening to me speak live, there's some information out in the lobby, and I'd appreciate you all to take that and educate yourself before your vote on November 6th. I'm hoping that once you educate yourself, you will vote no on Proposition B. Those of you that are looking at this videotape at a later time, please visit nomotax, NOMOtax.com for more information. I want to start off with three brief points that I want everyone to kind of keep in their mind as they hear me go on with my thoughts today, as well as when you're thinking about what you're going to do on November 6th. First, Proposition B is an outrageous and unfair 760% tax increase. It's the largest tax increase in Missouri's history. Increasing any tax when our economy is in trouble, when housing prices are low, unemployment is high, and nobody can afford to retire is a bad idea, even including increasing a tax on tobacco products. It's such a bad idea that the following groups are opposed to Proposition B, and I dare say in my 20 years in politics, I don't think these groups have ever agreed on anything. You have Governor Jay Nixon, who's against it. You have candidate Dave Spence, who's against it. You have the Missouri Farm Bureau, who's against it. You have Missouri Right to Life, who's against it, and Missouri Family Network, among other groups that are against Proposition B. For various reasons, they all see that it's essentially too big and too dangerous. Second, it's okay to be pro-education, which most of us are, and be against Proposition B, because again, you'll hear from me as we move on that Proposition B is simply too big and too dangerous. And then thirdly, think about everything I'm about to say, but instead of it being a tobacco tax, think of it as a tax on something that you actually care about. Maybe it's wine, maybe it's beer, maybe it's clothing, maybe it's your car, maybe it's food. Think about it in those terms, and would you ever in a million years vote on a tax increase of this size and scope? So kind of keep those three things in the back of your mind. Let's talk a little bit about the economics. We go, if Proposition B passes, we go from the lowest tax in the region, which is really the only metric I care about. I don't care about how we compare to New York. I don't care about how we compare to California. I care about how we compare to our border states. We go from the lowest to being higher than 4 of our 8 border states and reducing the advantage we have over those other border states. What does that mean? People will no longer come from those 4 states that were now higher. They're going to stop coming into our state. That means small businesses are going to suffer. Jobs are going to be lost. The consumer is going to be paying a lot more for the product. And ultimately, we're going to be generating less sales tax revenue for state and local coffers, not tobacco tax. I readily admit if you increase it 760%, you will generate more tobacco tax, but we'll be selling a lot less tobacco, and therefore there'll be a lot less sales tax associated with those particular sales. Let's talk a little bit about some of the statistics that the proponents are always throwing around. They throw around this $532 million Medicaid cost for tobacco products. Sometimes, but not tonight, they try and reduce it to what the cost is per family. Let me clear something up. Not one dime of Proposition B is used to offset those costs. Not one dime. that none of this money used to actually treat tobacco-related diseases and illnesses. So while they use the sin tax as kind of the political cover and to gin up political support, none of the money actually goes for those things, and I urge you to read it. The money will be diverted, just like it was with casino gaming, just like it was with the lottery. We've been burned twice, and how many times do you have to be burned before you stop sticking your hand in the fire? Now, Misty's correct when they say that they've tried in the law to say that this is new money, and I would tend to agree with that. But what they can't do is say that current appropriations will stay the exact same. Current appropriations can be diverted, can be siphoned off, so even though more money might be coming as a result of Proposition B, that doesn't necessarily mean net more money for education in general. Another thing about how much money we spend on tobacco cessation prevention, the state of Missouri has received $3.4 billion in tobacco taxes and master settlement agreement money since 2000. Is throwing more money at this the right solution? Do we really want to trust politicians with even more money at this point in time? My time is running short, so let me leave you with this thought. You know, when you're sitting at home and you're thinking to yourself, you read the newspaper and you're thinking, you know, government's gone wacko, they're just out of control. How did we get to this point? Taxes seem to go higher all the time, problems seem to get bigger, nothing seems to get solved. This is your kitchen table moment. This is your opportunity to do something to keep that from happening in the future. Voting no on Proposition B reins in government and tells the people in Jefferson City that enough is enough. Thank you all, and I urge you all to vote no on Proposition B on November 6th.
Thank you. We'll move on to Proposition E. We have a lot of them on the ballot, as I mentioned earlier. And this is a correction on your program. The program says that Senator Schaaf will be here. He was unable to, but he sent his representative, Chris Dunn, who will speak on Proposition E.
Thank you everyone for attending tonight and giving us a chance to speak on all of our respective ballot issues. Proposition E is probably the one you've heard the least about because there's no organized opposition to it, or for that matter, there's no organized support for it that we're aware of. Proposition E is based has something to do with the federal health care law that was passed in 2010. First of all, the main thing that Proposition E deals with is the creation of a state-based health insurance exchange, and that's a key component of the federal health care law. Starting in January 1st of 2014, every state is going to be required to have a health insurance exchange. The federal health care law does give some leeway. Does the state want to create a health insurance exchange? If so, the state government can do that. The federal government, if the states don't do it, the federal government will create a health insurance exchange for those states that do not. It also provides a measure where they can blend the federal and the state government can work together to create an exchange. In 2011, in the summer of 2011, we saw that the governor's director of insurance was trying to use the Missouri Health Insurance Pool, which is a quasi-governmental board that was put together in the early 1990s by the legislature to start the implementation of a state-based health insurance exchange. And I'll explain more about that in a minute. But I thought I might take a moment just to explain what a health insurance exchange is. In general terms, it is a web portal or website that the state will use and that health insurance companies will use cooperatively. The state will use it to determine the eligibility and enroll folks into our Medicaid programs. The state will also use it to steer small business owners who can't afford insurance in our current system to buy their health insurance through the health insurance exchange, and health insurance carriers, insurance companies, will sell their products in that web portal, therefore providing folks with private insurance, many who can't afford it today or for whatever reason don't have health insurance today. What will Proposition E do? If you vote yes for Proposition E, you will be saying that the governor and anybody that works for the governor will not be able to create a state-based health insurance exchange without the permission of the legislature, without a law, or without a vote of the people using a referendum or initiative petition. So that's what you're doing if you're voting yes for Proposition E. You're saying the governor can't do this on his own. If you're voting no for Proposition E, you're saying that the governor and the bureaucracy of our state can go ahead and initiate a state-based exchange through executive order or whatever means that they use. Here's why we saw this. Here's why Senator Schaaf thought this became necessary and ran Proposition E through the General Assembly to get it on the ballot next month. As I told you, the Director of Insurance used the Missouri Health Insurance Pool to start a health insurance exchange in the summer of 2011. Their exchange had been given a name, the Show Me Health Insurance Exchange. It was initiated by a panel of state planners that was never authorized by the General Assembly to operate, to initiate a state health insurance exchange. They applied for federal money. They applied for a $26 million grant in which they were awarded a $21 million grant. They started spending that money without appropriative authority from the legislature. They spent over $1.3 million paying consultants and contractors, some to the tune of over $300 an hour, to help get a state-based exchange off the ground. Again, they had no authority, either legally or appropriatively. They had no authority to do so. They did not bid out the contracts for these consultants. And so we kind of got this snapshot that, hey, maybe this is not how the people in Missouri want to do things. So we wanted to kind of, if Proposition E passes, our goal is to keep the power to create a state-based exchange out of the hands of the governor, concentrated in one person, his office, his administration. We wanted to keep that from happening. If you've got any questions about Proposition E, feel free to contact Senator Schaaf's office. His number at the Capitol is 573-751-2183, and we'd be glad to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. On the City of Jefferson proposition that is on the ballot, we're going to make a slight detour here. First off, Roger Swartz is a city employee and therefore cannot speak in favor or against any issue like this, but he can explain it to us. And so that's what we're going to allow him some time to do. And then we have added Kathy Harness, who will speak in favor of the issue, and then we have also someone who is opposed to the issue as well. So we'll proceed first by allowing Roger to explain the proposition.
Thank you, and appreciate that very much. First of all, the annexation that's on the ballot in November was actually voted on in the primary election in August. It passed within the city, but it failed in the area to be annexed. So now it is on the ballot in November again, and it has to pass by 2/3 in both of those areas for the area to be annexed. The area that we're talking about is called the Meadows by the Club annexation. It's on the western side of Jefferson City along Highway 50. It contains 169 acres that's contiguous to the western borders of our city. 57 of those acres actually are highway right-of-way or current city streets that are out there today. What is in this area? There's 2 hotels near the interchange on the western side of the city, a furniture store, and a manufacturing business that's associated with that furniture store. There's 9 single-family homes and 18 townhouses out there in that area that we're proposing to annex. It's something that the city tries to look at as the city grows. What are the areas that should be considered for annexation? And this is an area that when you look at our boundaries, it simply is trying to fill in areas that have developed and are developed out in that area.
And then Kathy Harness will speak in favor of that proposition.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for the opportunity to speak and to defer a little bit from the regular program that we had here. My name is Kathy Harness, and I am a resident of the area to be annexed in the Meadows by the Club. I support this annexation because it gives us access to professional fire and police service. It will lower our trash rates to those comparable with the city, and access to the single-stream recycling. As the city grows, we have greater opportunity for business to come to the area, and along with new businesses comes jobs. Annexation is part of a city's economic development. A city that doesn't grow its boundaries is in danger of becoming stagnant. Jefferson City is the economic engine of this area and region, and it must grow in order for us to maintain a healthy economy. The Meadows by the Club subdivision is urban in character and is split by the city line. A lot of the neighborhood in that area is within the city limits. There are actually just two cul-de-sacs that are not in the city limit. I happen to live in one of those areas. When I moved there, I was under the impression I was in the city, only to find out when I couldn't get a recycling can that I wasn't in the city. So I strongly support this annexation effort. The vote for this annexation is according to state statute. When you register to vote, state law requires you to vote according to your home address, the address where you reside, and not at your business address. So with that, I would just urge everyone, the residents in the area, to be annexed, as well as the city residents to vote yes on annexation on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And here as an opponent would be Vivek Puri with the Comfort Suite, the DoubleTree, and the Hampton Inn.
Actually, the name is Vivek Puri. I go by Vic. By profession, I'm an attorney. I'm also a businessman. I've contributed over $20 million to the economy of Jefferson City and also would like to see it succeed. However, I'm also a very big opponent when it comes to government overreaching and denial of property rights, which is exactly what's happening in this situation. Now, I want to dispel some misconceptions that has been put out by the plan of intent that the city published, and that is that we are in favor of the annexation as the owners of that property. Let me put it unequivocally to anybody that's watching and anybody that's in this room. Our group is opposed to being annexed into the city of Jefferson. And I'll repeat that again. Our group is opposed to being annexed to the city of Jefferson. Now, not only are we opposed, but 62% of the people that are a member of the neighborhood that wants to be annexed has already said that they do not want to be annexed into the city. Now, although the plan of intent that has been distributed and is supposed to be informative to the city government should give all sides of the story, it fails to do so. The plan is skewed strictly to residential property owners. It does not discuss commercial property owners whatsoever, and it does not discuss the cost of business that would increase or decrease by being admitted into the city. So in March, when we had the initial meeting about the annexation, I asked Ms. McMillan, and I said, Ms. McMillan, I don't see anything about commercial properties in here. Can I get some data about commercial properties? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, to this date, I have not received anything from the city of Jefferson about a commercial property analysis. Properties that do not have the right to vote in this situation and against their will are being asked to come into the city. For what reason, we'll get to a little bit later. If you do a commercial analysis on this situation, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, my cost of business goes up. I employ 120 people within this city, within this community, and I'm proud to say that in the last 2.5, 3 years, I have not laid one single person off from my establishments. I have tightened my belt. I have not taken home a paycheck sometime to make sure that my employees got what they needed to have to make sure they survived in this situation. But forcing me to increase my cost of business by 8% across the board. My electrical cost goes up by 8%. For taxes, there's no return on investment from it. I just have to pay it because I've been inducted into the city. My natural gas cost goes up by 8%. I don't get any return on investment. It goes up because I went into the city. My water goes up by 8%. I have no return on investment. I'm for the Cole County District. No return on investment whatsoever. It goes up by 8%. Now you have trash removal, sanitation. I get a 200% increase for trash removal because I'm a commercial property owner, and I have no say in it whatsoever. Everybody has talked about the candidates today that, you know, government shouldn't overreach. Well, this is exactly what the government's doing. It has power, and it's abusing its power without taking the consideration of the people involved. I run a company, and I have a budget. If I don't make budget, I will lay people off, and I will have to do it. Not because I want to do it, because the government is forcing my hand to do it. First, we have the federal government coming into our lives telling us what we need to do and what we don't need to do. Now we have local government telling us how we need to run our business. Really? We need to have a level playing field? Since when did we go into a socialistic economy? Since when were we a part of a communist society? We are a capitalistic society. We are the United States of America. We are not the United States of China. I do not want the government in my business, and I do not want it to tell me how I need to run it. And that's exactly what's happening in this situation. Annexation is supposed to be voluntary. If it's involuntary, then it's considered a denial of due process. The state of Missouri has a two-part test in that aspect. And that two-part test means that it has to be reasonable for both sides, meaning that the city must provide me something that I do not get at this point in time at a more cost-effective or better manner. Well, let's go over that. Police protection is provided by the Sheriff's Department. I think they're very professional. I have no issue with their providing a service. As far as sanitation is concerned, we have both the same people in sewer and trash, except my cost goes up. Road maintenance, okay, Cole County, we have it. The state of Missouri, which maintains our roads. The city of Jefferson's budget doesn't compare, okay? There's just no comparison in that whole aspect of it. Health and welfare, well, Cole County's health department is much better. Let me tell you why. Because when the main broke this week on Monday, and I was at my DoubleTree hotel, do you know who came into my hotel? It wasn't JC Health Department that came and told me that the main was broke and what I needed to do. It was the Cole County Health Department that walked in. They've got personnel to take care of business. They came, they found me, and they said, "Sir, what are you doing?" And we told them what we were doing, and they were happy when they left. This whole situation is nothing more than a shameless grab for tax dollars, something that we have no say in for at this point in time. I encourage everybody to look at this whole situation holistically. And I ask you to vote no on Proposition 1.
That concludes our event tonight, and I certainly want to thank all of the people who were here for all the propositions on our ballot, and I'm hoping that a lot more people participate via JCTV. Thanks to our sponsors, the young professionals of the Chamber of Commerce. Thanks to the City of Jefferson for providing this facility, and thanks to all the volunteers who helped put this together. But most of all, thank you for those of you who attended tonight and participated. And good night.
Sure, Vic. How's it going?
Well, it could always be better.
I assume you guys couldn't get water up in your upper floors.